Natural disasters such as earthquakes bring out the best and worst in people. While there are countless stories of heroism and selflessness in the aftermath of such tragedies, there are also those who see it as an opportunity to exploit the situation for their own gain. These opportunistic individuals, commonly referred to as looters, prey on the vulnerable and take advantage of the chaos and destruction that a disaster brings. The recent earthquake that hit Turkey is no exception. In the immediate aftermath of the quake, reports of looting began to surface. Instead of coming together as a community to help those in need, these looters focused solely on their own selfish interests. They pillaged stores and homes, taking whatever they could get their hands on. It is deeply disturbing to see that in a time of crisis, there are those who would willingly harm others for their own gain. While the rest of the community was struggling to survive and recover, looters were busy stealing and causing further damage. Their actions not only hurt the victims of the earthquake but also hindered the relief efforts of emergency responders. What these looters fail to understand is that their actions have consequences. They are not only breaking the law, but they are also violating the trust and unity of their community. They are taking resources away from those who need it most and making an already difficult situation even more challenging. It is important for us to condemn the actions of these looters and remind them that what they are doing is morally wrong. We must also come together as a community to prevent further looting and protect ourselves from those who would take advantage of a tragedy. In conclusion, the looters who emerge after an earthquake are taking advantage of the situation for their own selfish gain. Their actions are reprehensible and undermine the efforts of those who are working hard to recover and rebuild. We must speak out against their behavior and do everything in our power to prevent further looting. Only by coming together as a community can we overcome the challenges that disasters such as earthquakes bring. In the wake of a devastating earthquake, it is common to see videos of the disaster spread across social media. While some individuals share these videos as a way of informing the public, there are those who post them with an ulterior motive. These individuals derive pleasure from the pain and suffering of others, using the disaster as an opportunity to gain attention and create sensational content. To make matters worse, there are those who express joy and excitement at the sight of the destruction caused by an earthquake. These individuals have no empathy for those affected by the disaster and are driven purely by a desire for attention and likes on social media. This behavior is not only distasteful but also morally reprehensible. The victims of the earthquake are going through a traumatic experience, and the last thing they need is to see their suffering turn into entertainment for others. The sharing of these videos and the expression of joy at the disaster only serves to perpetuate the culture of callousness and indifference that is becoming increasingly prevalent in our society. It is essential that we hold these individuals accountable for their actions. We must condemn their behavior and make it clear that it is unacceptable to derive pleasure from the suffering of others. We must also educate people about the importance of empathy and compassion, especially in times of crisis. In conclusion, the act of sharing videos of the earthquake and expressing joy at the disaster is not only insensitive but also a reflection of the degenerating morality of our society. We must all do our part in creating a culture of empathy and compassion where the pain and suffering of others are not exploited for personal gain. Natural disasters like earthquakes are an unavoidable fact of life. However, the level of destruction caused by such events can be greatly reduced through proper safety measures. Despite this, there are still developers who ignore safety regulations, cut corners on materials, and exploit cheap labor to maximize their profits. These greedy developers prioritize their own profits over the safety and well-being of the people who will inhabit the buildings they construct. They flout regulations designed to ensure that buildings can withstand natural disasters like earthquakes, fires, and floods. They take shortcuts in the construction process, using substandard materials, employing poorly trained workers, and ignoring warnings from experts about the risks of their approach. The consequences of these reckless practices can be catastrophic. Buildings constructed with cheap materials and labor are more likely to collapse during earthquakes or other disasters, leading to injury and death for those inside. When developers ignore safety regulations, they are essentially gambling with the lives of the people who will occupy their buildings. It is not just the people living in these structures who are at risk. The entire community is affected when buildings collapse, blocking roads, cutting off access to critical services, and leaving people homeless and vulnerable. The financial costs of such disasters are also immense, as governments are forced to step in and provide aid and support to those affected. It is time for these greedy developers to be held accountable for their actions. Governments must take a stronger stance on safety regulations, enforcing penalties and fines for those who violate them. Consumers must also demand that safety be prioritized over profits when it comes to building construction. By working together, we can ensure that developers are forced to consider safety as an integral part of their business model rather than an afterthought. In conclusion, the reckless actions of greedy developers who cut corners on safety measures and exploit cheap labor and materials are a danger to society as a whole. It is up to all of us to demand that safety be prioritized over profits and to hold those who violate safety regulations accountable for their actions. Only then can we hope to minimize the damage caused by natural disasters like earthquakes and protect our communities from harm.